All right, so let's transition to our main topic here today around long-term care. And this is a topic that gives a lot of adult individuals and families a lot of angst, just based on a lot of uncertainty, not just based on where you're going to go, but also the overall cost of that too. So our objective here is to really address some of these topics head on. Think about your own personal long-term care plan to make sure that you have a solid one in place and it's effectively communicated to the loved ones that will be taking care of you. So before we jump into that detail, Molly, why don't you just share with what is long-term care?
Yeah, so long-term care is your ability to do activities of daily living. And that's really bathing yourself, dressing yourself, feeding yourself, going to the bathroom, getting in and out of bed, getting in and out of a chair. So once you're not able to do those activities on your own, that's really triggering the long-term care event. So when we look at the broad population that this impacts, well, it's quite a staggering number. It's 70% of adults over age 65 will be impacted as having a long-term care event.
So as we think about that plan, what we encourage you to think about is your own personal plan, and do you really have one in place today?
Yeah.
Because as we look at a lot of the documentation from an estate planning standpoint, it will at least help identify someone out there today to help take care of you from the aspects of making decisions from a healthcare standpoint, but it's really not going to direct exactly what you want. So that's what we're here to talk about in this section.
It really comes down to where do you want to be cared for?
Yeah.
Would you like to stay at home and have in-home care? Or are you comfortable going to an assisted living or retirement community? There's a whole scale of services available, but really identifying where you want that care to take place, I think is a good point to start the conversation.
The type of home care, but also if you're okay going to a facility, there's a wide range of facilities that you can go to.
Right.
At a wide range of costs too.
Yeah.
So even what we encourage is go out there and visit these facilities to understand what the care looks like, what the facilities look like, and do that while you're still able to make sure that you're making a clear decision there too. The other thing that I think about is who do you want to care for you? If you have your healthcare power of attorney, again, that will identify who is going to make those decisions on your behalf. But even with the healthcare power of attorney, we always recommend make sure you tell that person, that they are named in that document to make sure they're comfortable with that. But then if you're going to stay at home and you're having someone come in and help facilitate, is that same person going to be there to help you? So it's important to have those conversations and identify the people who are going to help, facilitate even at home care on your behalf, if that's the case. What else?
Well, I think even just considering the level of care that you need, there's so many different opportunities to receive the care that you need, but making sure that you're positioned to receive, whether it's skilled nursing or memory care, or even just other services that may fall under the range of assisted living, like being positioned to receive those services and fulfill your care needs is another piece of the equation that maybe as you're starting to think about, okay, what would my plan be? You don't really know what those needs are going to be necessarily down the road. So having a plan that really encompasses a broad approach to make sure that you get that care you need, I think is another thing to really consider working through this.
There's a lot of creative ways to think about that, and I think the message there is having that conversation and thinking through that of what you want is very critical there.
Okay. Definitely. The last consideration really looking at the long-term care plan is cost, of course, which seems like that comes down to everything, but tell us a little bit more about that, Neil.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of anxiety for clients and folks that we talk to, and having a plan around if an event of like this arises, how are you going to pay for it, and what's the probability of it significantly impacting my wealth. So depending on the facility that you're going into, you can expect to pay somewhere between $60,000 to even $120,000 a year. That's why we think it's important to go out and visit these places to understand the scope of services, the quality of care, and also the potential transitioning into other needs of services within one place is important to understand there. A few ways to fund that, in a very common conversation is just thinking about long-term care insurance. We get questions on these type of policies all the time, whether clients are seeking new ones, or they're considering new ones, or even looking at existing ones they have in place. There's been an evolution over the last, I would say, 10 years of insurance policies that are related to long-term care. And one of the more traditional ones is a traditional long-term care policy, where you're making a payment directly to an insurance company for a return of specific long-term care needs. Those have actually become less popular because the cost of these type of policies have gone up dramatically. And to obtain a new one, you would expect as a single person to pay somewhere between even $3,000 to $6,000. Or if you're going in as a couple, that can be anywhere between $6,000 to even $12,000 because there's a full underwriting of insurance. It's just based on your current age today, your health today, and also family history as well. So a lot of things to consider there if you're seeking a traditional policy, because at the end of the day, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that could be a lot of money invested into these type of policies where you may or may not need that. So what's become more popular here is what we call a hybrid policy more recently. This is a policy that could be used in maybe multiple ways. For example, if you seek a long-term care insurance, but also has a death benefit to it. The benefits may not be as attractive as a traditional policy, but the trade-off is that if you don't use it for long-term care needs, you'll get some money out of it. Typically, you'll get your money back. Longer term, if you don't use it, it's a poor return on your money, but at the end of the day, you at least get something out of it. And then the alternative hybrid policy is having life insurance that has a long-term care rider built into that, where if you do have a long-term care need, you can actually access the death benefit that you have in place, for your long-term care reimbursement there. Another option you have then is looking at self-funding. A lot of clients have accumulated enough wealth where they don't need to go out and seek a specific long-term care insurance policy, and they can use their assets if they so choose to do so at that point, and they go into one of those facilities. This is all going to be driven on measurement of your financial plan, but thinking about the type of facility you want to consider and the duration of that also helps identify if you're able to self-fund or not. But at the end of the day, we'd rather see clients keep more money in their pockets to transition to their next generation, especially if their probability of a long-term care event is pretty low. And then the final consideration is government-funded plans, which are usually state-specific. And this is why we encourage you to go out and visit these facilities that might be Medicaid eligible. And first off, to qualify for Medicaid, you have to have minimal assets to do so, which is rare relative to a lot of the clients that we work with. But the alternative is clients will come to us and ask, well, if I want to put together or give away my assets to create visibility on a low asset base so I can qualify for these state plans, there's a very common asset protection trust that is taken into consideration there. But going back to those trade-offs and thinking about your personal objectives and the care that you want is going to be very important there because, again, the state-funded facilities or ones that qualify for Medicare may not be up to your standards or expectation. So you got to look at those trade-offs if you're trying to protect your wealth. And the final piece of that is if you are going to try to protect your wealth, you really got to give up control of that wealth to do so, which there's significant trade-offs to that, especially if you're looking to continue to maintain and live your own personal lifestyle before that event happens. So as we wrap up this discussion around long-term care, as I mentioned up front, this is a topic we're going to be having more proactive conversations with our clients going forward, especially here in 2024. As we talk heavily around your financial plan, your estate plan, we want to make sure you have a solid long-term care plan in place to make sure that you can alleviate some stress, how it's going to be funded, but then finally, your loved ones will know exactly what to do and what you're seeking relative to your own personal care. So that concludes our conversation here today. Thank you, Molly, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.